face is going to be out in this game tonight, but you've brought in a couple of veterans. Why those veterans specifically? You could have chosen from a whole roster, but you chose those guys.
Yeah, it's still the veterans that are in camp are still young aged. Some of the guys we purposely left out because they've had a ton of January camps. We want to give other players opportunities, but it was important for us to bring players that have been part of what we've been doing. Part of the teaching helps when you have players that have done it before, and they can help with the younger players, and really share what it means to be part of this program.
Hey Greg, just wondering, you talk a lot about development. Obviously January is a good time for that. How crucial is this camp, this match, for sort of looking forward to a home World Cup in 2 years?
I think this is an opportunity for some players, all the players, to show that they want to stake a claim to be part of the roster in 2026, knowing that we're 2.5 years out. This is the beginning for some of those players, knowing that you do have 2.5 years. They're going to mature, they're going to improve, but really making an impression on the coaching staff. So what we've seen so far has been positive. And again, it all culminates with the fact that you get to compete tomorrow afternoon in front of a crowd in a great environment.
Coach, on Telemundo, there will be so many games like this with young players before the World Cup?
That's just it. There won't be. And so this is a great opportunity for some of these players. We obviously have the Olympics, which is another platform for some of our younger players. But, there's not going to be too many opportunities like this from now until the World Cup. And that's why, thankfully the MLS teams were gracious in releasing their players, because it really gives these guys an opportunity to show what they can do.
Steven, to your left.
Facing a Slovenian side that, like y'all, has a lot of guys making their first appearance with their national team. Preparation-wise, what kind of a challenge is that when you don't normally face Slovenia to begin with, and then now they're, like y'all, bringing in a crop full of new players?
Yeah, so personnel, we were able to see what their roster's been doing with their clubs, but collectively it was obviously challenging. A lot of what we're going off is this coach and his style, and trying to figure out what they could potentially do. But I think part of adapting and part of having to deal with the actual game is seeing what they do and reacting on the moment. We have a pretty good idea, but if they change, I think that's going to be a great challenge for our players, and looking forward to seeing how they respond to that.
We'll take some questions from our virtual audience and begin with Doug McIntyre from Fox.
Thanks, Michael. Hey, Greg. Good to see you. Two questions for me, if I may. The first on goalkeepers. Whoever you start in goal tomorrow is going to be uncapped. Curious your thoughts on that position overall, given the uncertainty whether Matt's going to be playing a lot at Forest. Ethan hasn't been playing there. So your thoughts on the goalkeeping position overall. And the other question on Gio Reyna, there was a report this week that he could be on the move this month. I'm curious if you communicated to him that he needs to be playing ahead of Copa America, and just your general reaction to that report. Thanks, Greg. Good luck tomorrow.
No, I think that any professional who's competitive wants to be on the field, and this is a case where Gio hasn't been getting the game time that he wants, and potentially looking for alternate options, and that's completely understandable. You've seen in our player pool throughout these years, that's a pretty common reaction. So we support him and in his quest to get on the field regularly, and looking forward to the outcome of that. In terms of our goalkeeper, I know a lot's been made of the goalkeeper situation, but we see it kind of differently. There has been moments in U.S. soccer history where our number one goalie hasn't been getting regular game time, and that's just part of it. The whole thing is an ebb and flow, and we're supporting our guys, the whole goalkeeper pool, and trying to help them in any way possible. But in terms of tomorrow, the goalkeeper will be an uncapped player, and we're looking forward to seeing what they can do. It's been, I think, a good camp for the goalkeepers in general. And again, like all the players, and now it's what you do on the field in front of a crowd against an opponent.
Next is Ryan Talmadge from Goal.com.
Thank you, Michael. Greg, similar situation with the attack, where you have a bunch of guys who are uncapped. So for you as a coach, how do you kind of balance sticking to the principles that you use when you have Christian and Tim and Flo in the attack versus the principles you're going to use when you have this group of guys with different skill sets and different sort of experience levels?
Yeah, there's not going to be much of a change. We're looking for guys to be aggressive. We're looking for to keep the ball, to move the opponent around. And, it's just about seeing how this group of players can execute that. So far in training, they look good. And, in general, I would expect probably, before the day's over, I'd expect probably 13 players to make their debut, 13, 14 players. So it's going to be, a nice afternoon for a lot of guys. And, they deserve it after a strong camp.
A total of 14 players on the 23-player final roster in search of their first cap with the national team. We'll continue with Charlie Bone from MLSsoccer.com.
Hey, Greg, thanks for your time. Two questions for me. The first is, as you get to the end of this January camp, could you reflect a little bit on where this fits into the national team's activities and whether it's been useful or less useful maybe than years past? And then second, I wonder if you could speak on a couple of your players having moved to Liga MX, making those moves official in the past few weeks, which has caused a little bit of discourse, I guess, about whether that is the right environment or I guess a substantially competitive environment compared to European opportunities. And if you could just share your take on that and players challenging themselves.
Yeah, I think my answer on that. Every player has their own pathway. Every player has to evaluate their opportunities in front of them and make what they think is the best decision for their career. In the case of Cade and Brendan, they chose to go to high-profile Liga MX clubs, and we know it's highly competitive where they're going. So it will be a different type of challenge for them. And we're excited to see their journey. We're supporting them from here, but again, it's an individual type of move. Really, it's about their priorities and what they're looking to accomplish with their careers. In terms of the other question, what was it? I just slipped my mind. Anyone? January camp. Yeah. So again, I think this has been a useful exercise. I really do. Considering the Olympics are coming up, Marco has been with us the entire time. He's been able to see how his players can deal with the pressures of the senior national team, see how they're coping with some older players, and really to get everyone on the same page. And most importantly, I think give players an opportunity. When the schedule becomes difficult, and when we're playing these stakes matches, it's something to give new players, really young players, an opportunity in these high-profile events like the Nations League and Copa America. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to reward players with strong MLS seasons and bring them into camp and see what they can do and be able to evaluate them.
Just one correction before we continue. 16 players have the chance to get their first cap, 14 players in the national team camp for the first time. Next will be Brian Shreda from American Soccer Now.
Thank you, Michael. Greg, I wanted to ask you about Esmir Bartarovic and what you've seen from him. He's the youngest player in camp. He's U20 eligible for the next Olympics. He's very young. I'm wondering to see what you saw from him. I saw he scored against River Plate in the friendly. And then also, have you spoken with any players about potentially being overage options for the Olympics? How is that identification process going? Thank you.
That's going well. We're sorting through all of that. There's some complications with the fact that clubs don't have to release the players. So that's the first barrier. The second barrier would be participation in Copa America. And then, just the overall load of that entire summer are things that we're considering. Taking into consideration what the players have done the previous year, what we project them to do in the next year. We don't want to overload them. We want them going into 2025 healthy. In terms of Esmir, the coaching staff has been really impressed with him, really impressed with his skill set. He's 18 years old, but he's got a strong mentality, very competitive, very aggressive on the ball. willing to do the work defensively, and just has coped really well with the environment. You know, you would think that a young player, 18 years old, comes in and is shy and is afraid to impose himself on the field, but this is the exact opposite of Esmir, and we think he's he's got a great future ahead of him.
We'll take a few more questions and continue with Kyle Bond from Sporting News.
Thank you, Michael. Coach, good to talk to you. You've had Drake Callender in the national team a few times, but he hasn't gotten minutes yet. What have you seen from him in camp so far, and how has he handled that through the last few times, which has to be a weird mix of like excited to be part of the team, but also a bit frustrating as it goes on?
Yeah, I can understand that. You get a taste of the national team, and then the first thing is, okay, you're happy to be there. The next thing is you want to get on the field. And, he hasn't gotten on the field yet. And, I can understand some of the disappointment, but I think it speaks volumes of what he's been able to accomplish in such a short period of time with Inter Miami. He's made big save after big save last year and really established himself as one of the top goalkeepers in Major League Soccer. So, for him, it's just about continuing on in his career and continue to progress and develop. And I'm sure there'll be opportunities for him.
Next is Sanjay Sujan Thakumar.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Greg. Greg, two questions for you. First one about Jack McGlynn after working with him. Thoughts on his profile and where he could fit in on the pitch. Do you see him as more of a deeper lying playmaker, more of an attacking mid, maybe somewhere in between? Just your thoughts on how he fits into the system. And then also just bigger picture in terms of the progression of the pool. It's been about a year since the last World Cup, and there's 2.5 years till 26. You're asked a lot about young talent coming up, but can you discuss your expectations in terms of those younger guys pushing for spots in the squad and potentially the lineup with your main group? Are you satisfied with how those younger guys are progressing? Is that on schedule, or are you hoping for more fresh faces to break in sooner with the main group? Could you evaluate that? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. As coaches, you always want more. It would be great if we had this, a whole crop of guys that are coming in and really pushing to be starters. But two things we have to remember is that development takes time. We still have 2.5 years. I'm sure there are players that will emerge that we're not even on the radar right now. And the second thing would be is we have a strong starting 11, and it's really hard to displace some of those players. You think about the clubs they're playing at, the impact they've made on the international scene and their club scene for the last 4 years. It becomes more challenging when you have that high profile, those high profile players. But, we're confident that, between the Olympics and, all the youth development initiatives in the next couple of years, that we will see players really step up and emerge and make a case to be on the 2026 team. First question was about Jack, really technical player. He makes passes that can open up the game. Really great eye for space, and it's been really fun working with him. You see that both Mikey and Marco speak really highly of him, and they get to work with him in person has been great because he has a high level of technical ability.
Our last question comes from Andrew Jones.
Thanks, Michael and Greg. Hope it's been a good start to your 2024. Just want to ask you, just in terms of any of the young players that you have gotten to learn even more about that surprised you in a good way from you getting to interact with them for the first time? Thank you.
It's been a great camp, and we've been able to build relationships with the players. A lot of individual conversations, a lot of small group conversations. And to me, it's been a pleasure because they've been so open, really both open, to learning, but also to communicating and really solving everything together. It's been a really productive camp in the co-work that we've been doing together with the players. So really excited for all of them. And it's hard to pick out one because they've all just been great, whether that's effort on the field or off the field with the communication.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, everyone, for joining. The mix zone will be open.